the night, and our community is hurting, and I really badly needed to be here. Should a technical issue and I appreciate so much the outreach from members and offers of help and assistance. It's just a tragic situation, and I'll be leaving right after we gavel the meeting to a close to go back down to the site. Should a technical issue with my virtual connection arise, which I do not expect during this markup, Vice Chair Bishop will assume the role of acting chair in my absence until the issue is resolved. I want to welcome my good friend, Subcommittee Ranking Member Judge Harold Carter, as well as Full Committee Chair DeLauro, Ranking Member Granger, and all of the subcommittee members, both there in person and those members participating virtually. Before I move to my opening statement, I'd like to offer a brief explanation of how this markup will work since we are functioning hybridly. As you can see, some members like myself and Mr. Christ are using secure video teleconferencing to participate remotely. For others on video conference, once you start speaking, there will be a slight delay before you are displayed on the main screen. Speaking into the microphone activates the camera, displaying the speaker on the main screen. Do not stop your remarks if you do not immediately see the screen switch. If the screen does not change after several seconds, please make sure you are not muted. To minimize background noise and ensure the correct speaker is being displayed, we ask that the members who are participating by video remain on mute unless you have sought recognition. For members using the video option, you will notice a clock on the bottom of your screen. Oh, actually, Nick, I think we're not in need of a clock today, so I don't think this is correct. In terms of the speaking order, we will follow our traditional order, beginning with the chair and ranking member of the subcommittee, then the chair and ranking member of the full committee, and then any other members who wish to speak. Of course, in a markup, unless you have an amendment to present or really feel compelled to speak, speaking is certainly not required. We have set up an email address to which members can send anything they wish to submit in writing at any of our hearings or markups, including documents to be inserted in the record by unanimous consent, amendments, motions, other unanimous consent requests, and so on. The email address has been provided to your staff. I would remind all members that they must verbally request unanimous consent out loud, separately from sending the document or written UC requests to the email address. Now I will move to my opening statement. The bill before us today is a significant sign of our commitment to our service members and their families and to our veterans. We can all be proud of the work we did to produce this bill, which takes into account the requests and feedback that all of you and our colleagues on and off the committee have provided. This bill is also the result of numerous hearings the subcommittee held earlier this year that addressed crucial areas within our jurisdiction. In addition to our hearings with each of the services on installations and quality of life for our service members, the subcommittee also held hearings that dove more deeply into some of the issues that have a significant effect on quality of life in our military. We held a hearing with Department of Defense officials and GAO to maintain our focus on the substandard conditions found in privatized housing across the branches of our military. And we also held a hearing on PFAS, PFOA contamination that brought in expert witnesses on the health effects of these toxic chemicals, as well as officials from DOD and VA, giving us a chance to make clear to them that more must be done. And we do that in this bill. On the VA side, in addition to our annual budget hearing with the Secretary, we also held a hearing on the VA response to the COVID-19 crisis, an oversight hearing on women's health, mental health, homelessness, and whole health programs at VA, and a much-needed hearing on VA's infrastructure challenges. We also held a hearing that examined the current VA policy on assisted reproductive services and how it is failing veterans and their families. And finally, we held a hearing with the related agencies in our bill, which gave us a needed update on their initiatives and challenges. I'm proud that the bill before us reflects this work and makes needed investments in the programs that improve our military readiness and quality of life, and provides the benefits and medical care our veterans have earned during their service to our nation. Specifically, the FY22 committee recommendation provides $124.5 billion in discretionary funding. This is an $11.4 billion increase above the FY21 enacted funding level and $1.3 billion above the FY22 budget request. The bill provides $10.9 billion for military construction, $2.9 billion above the enacted level, and $1.07 billion above the President's budget request for critical infrastructure needs on military installations. This total includes $213 million to construct 7 new child development centers. I know that that is an accomplishment about which this entire subcommittee will be proud. That is $193 million more than the request. With 9,000 children of service members on a waiting list for childcare, this investment is imperative. To address another important category that is critical to improving the quality of life for our men and women in uniform, $550 million in the bill is dedicated to projects for the construction of barracks. This is $237 million above the amount in the budget request. There is also $1.4 billion for family housing construction in this bill, including $116 million for housing support costs to address issues such as mold, vermin, and lead in military family housing. We are firmly committed as a subcommittee to addressing the unacceptable conditions and neglect that has persisted in military family housing for far too long. Turning toward issues related to the environment, the bill provides $100 million for climate change and resiliency projects, which is $86 million above the FY21 enacted level and $100 million above the FY22 budget request. This is a critical issue for many installations, and we continue to make this a high priority. $150 million is provided for PFAS PFOA cleanup at contaminated installations. And finally, the bill includes $382.9 million from the Energy Resilience and Conservation Investment Program, which is $136 million above the request. For the programs of the Department of Veterans Affairs, the bill includes a total of $268.6 billion, including mandatory spending, of which $113.1 billion is discretionary funding. This amount represents an increase of $8.7 billion in discretionary funding over the FY21 enacted level and $176.4 million above the budget request. Within the total, $97.6 billion is for VA medical care, $100 million above the budget request, and providing for approximately 7.1 million patients to be treated in FY22. This funding encompasses, and these are numbers about which we can be very proud, $778.5 million for gender-specific care for women, which is an historic amount. $2.2 billion for homelessness programs. $621 million for opioid abuse treatment and prevention. $84 million for whole health. $307 million in rural health initiatives, and $13.2 billion in mental health care services, including $599 million for suicide prevention outreach. We have also boosted investment in medical and prosthetic research, an area of bipartisan member interest, bringing the total to $902 million. Other areas of interest include robust oversight of the electronic health records management implementation, responding to the disability claims backlog, ensuring access and care for veterans in rural and underserved areas, including telehealth, and improving treatment of conditions that disproportionately affect veterans. I'll also add that we will have later this year a hearing specifically on the implementation of the electronic health records maintenance implementation, because members across the House of Representatives and Senate have really serious concerns about the problems that have plagued this process for many, many years. I can hear former Chairwoman Lowy's stern voice, which was rare, and echoing in my ear. Finally, the bill provides an increase of $5 million over the budget request for the 4 related agencies to maintain service levels and invest in needed maintenance and improvements: the American Battle Monuments Commission, the Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims, Arlington National Cemetery, and the Armed Forces Retirement Home, a special project of Judge Carter. This includes the requested funding to complete construction of Arlington National Cemetery's much-needed Southern Expansion Project, which will create 80,000 additional burial spaces. With this bill, we are investing in programs to make a notable difference in the lives of our current and former service members and their families. I truly want to thank all of our subcommittee members for their engagement while drafting this legislation, especially your active feedback and input during our virtual hearings. This is truly a subcommittee product, and it's one that I think we can all be proud of. I also want to thank my partner, Judge Carter, for his unflagging dedication to our service members and veterans, and importantly, for his friendship. I'm proud to have you as our ranking member on this subcommittee. I also want to thank Chairwoman DeLauro and Ranking Member Granger for their support for the subcommittee's work and for giving us the flexibility to be able to make such an incredible difference in this year's mark. This is a good bill that addresses urgently needed issues for our military and veterans, and I urge all of my colleagues to join me in advancing this important legislation forward. Before I turn to the ranking member for his opening statement, I want to thank the staff who have worked hard to prepare this bill. I send thanks to Betsy Bina, the subcommittee minority clerk, and John Muscolini on the minority staff, as well as Grady Bourne and Phil Hokinson of Judge Carter's personal staff. I also want to thank the majority Milcon VA subcommittee staff, including our clerk, Lisa Molyneux, Sarah Young, Brad Allen, Nicole Cohen, Nick Burton, and Luke Georgiadis, and of course, Lauren Woolman on my personal staff. A particular thank you to Sarah Young for her 20 years of service to the House of Representatives, the last 10 on the Appropriations Committee. Sarah is retiring, and this will be her last subcommittee markup. I learned a lot about the Milcon side of our bill from you, Sarah, and I know the whole subcommittee joins me in thanking you for your service to our country. I'd now like to turn to Judge Carter, our distinguished ranking member, for his opening statement. Judge?
Good morning, and thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you for recognizing me, and let me say, you've had more than your share of trauma in the last week with the parade incident and now this building collapse. And I wouldn't expect anything other than what you're doing, taking care of your constituents, but take care of yourself while you're at it. That's a lot of trauma to deal with in a short period of time, and you're very needed on this subcommittee. It's
so much.
It's very good to be here today and to consider FY22 bill. I know you take your position as chairwoman of this subcommittee very seriously. And along with the subcommittee staff, you work hard to understand and incorporate numerous members' requests. Of course, I would have done some things differently if I were in your position. However, you've done a good job. I strongly support the funding provided for military construction projects, and I am pleased the bill continues the subcommittee's initiative to build child development centers and barracks, as well as to provide increases for energy conservation and resilience projects and environmental cleanups, especially PFAS. The bill also makes progress on important defense projects, including shipyard modernizations, the new B-21 bomber, the ground-based strategic deterrent system. The bill fully supports veterans and makes investments in suicide prevention, research, and innovative health programs. The bill also invests in information technology systems so that the VA can deliver the programs veterans rely on. It continues the electronic health record modernization initiative with strong oversight mechanisms. I'm pleased to provide the final installment of funds for the southern expansion of Arlington National Cemetery, and it provides increase for the American Battle Monuments Commission and the Armed Forces Retirement Home. While the increases are small in comparison to other parts of the bill, they will have a large effect and do a lot of good. Madam Chairwoman, thank you for working with me on my particular requests, including the new barracks at Fort Hood and accommodating the many Republican requests. Last but not least, I want to thank the subcommittee's outstanding minority staff, Betsy Bana, John Mussolini, and for their work. Both are consummate professionals who exemplified the Appropriations Committee's commitment to member service. A special thanks to Phil Hokinson, who has done great work as my VA Fellow for the year. I look forward to reporting this bill to the full committee, and I yield back.
Thank you so much, Judge Carter. Now I'd like to recognize Chairwoman Rosa DeLauro for her opening statement.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you, Ranking Member Judge Carter. First off, I want to express my sympathies to your constituents and to you, and you are in the right place at what is an incredible time. So our thoughts, our prayers are with you and with your constituents. The unveiling story, hour by hour, just demonstrates the catastrophe in your community, and so thank you for joining here this morning, but as I said, you are in the right place, and please know that we are with you. I also want to comment on the very, I think the bill is just demonstrable in terms of the relationship between you and the ranking member Carter, on how thoughtful it is, how robust it is in terms of meeting the needs of both our veterans and of military construction. So I applaud the two of you for your dedication and your work together. I also want to just say, as you pointed out, Madam Chair, that the subcommittee, this is a subcommittee bill, and so to the members of the subcommittee, both sides of the aisle, grateful for your input in really crafting this outstanding piece of legislation. And as always, I'm delighted to be here with the ranking member of the full committee, Congresswoman Granger, and in partnership with her as well. Our nation's service members, military families, and veterans sacrifice so much for us. In turn, we owe it to them to ensure they receive the resources they deserve and the services they need. With an overall discretionary increase of $11.4 billion above 2021, the fiscal year 2022 Military Construction, Veterans Affairs, and Related Agencies Appropriations Bill upholds our commitment to service members, veterans, and their families, and rebuilds the infrastructure that serves military families and veterans. Within the military construction portion of the bill, the legislation also protects global democracy with important investments in military facilities. This legislation supports our veterans by providing $97.6 billion for veterans medical care, which represents an increase of $7.6 billion above last year. To address specific critical needs, it includes $13.2 billion for mental health care, including $599 million for suicide prevention outreach, $778.5 million for gender-specific care for women, and $2.2 billion for homelessness assistance programs. For far too long, facilities that house military families and serve veterans have been allowed to fall apart or otherwise become no longer fit for purpose. This legislation reverses those trends and rebuilds our infrastructure with $2.2 billion for VA construction projects to repair and retrofit Veterans Affairs facilities, $1.4 billion for military family housing, helping to address issues such as mold, vermin, and lead, and $213 million for child development centers to support the families of service members. And to further protect our national security, this bill provides $205.8 million for the NATO Security Investment Program. This funding will be instrumental in responding to the challenges posed by Russian aggression, as well as the risks and the threats emanating from the Middle East and from North Africa. Finally, with $100 million for climate change and resiliency projects and $162.9 million for natural disaster recovery construction, this legislation confronts the climate crisis and helps military installations adapt to rising sea levels and worsening natural disasters. And I also applaud the efforts to clean up our contaminated facilities and with the focus on PFAS. These investments in our service members, veterans, and families, as well as in our nation's infrastructure and climate resiliency, honor the sacrifices of those who wear or who have worn the uniform and will ensure our nation is prepared for future challenges. Look forward to continuing to work with you as we move to full committee consideration, and I urge support for this legislation. And a final note is I too want to say congratulations and thank you to the staff which makes this all happen. It's not alchemy. It is because of your hard work that this bill is produced. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, for your support and your kind words. Now I'd like to recognize Ranking Member Granger for any opening remarks she'd like to make.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know we all have you in our prayers as you address this terrible tragedy in your district. We will be with you in prayer, and I know you're strong enough to handle this. I also now want to thank you for presenting the Military Construction and Veterans Affairs Bill today. I appreciate the work that you and Ranking Member Carter have done this year, reaching across the aisle to fund many projects important to the members. Unfortunately, just like the bills we discussed yesterday, this bill is based on a funding framework that the majority party developed without our Republican support. The difference of opinion on funding priorities and policy positions, I'm afraid, could slow down our appropriations process this year when there's nothing more important than funding our nation's military and our nation's veterans. So we must try to resolve these disagreements so that the important bills like this one can be signed into law. One area that's particularly concerning in this bill is that it fails to include longstanding language prohibiting the transfer of detainees currently at Guantanamo Bay to the United States. These detainees are the worst of the worst, and we need assurance that they won't be moved to our soil. In addition, the report goes well beyond our committee's jurisdiction with its language about fertility treatment for veterans. This is a complicated issue that should be carefully considered by the appropriate authorizing committee, the House Veterans Affairs Committee. We have to move past these controversial provisions so that we can do the good things proposed in this bill, like funding the many important and needed military construction projects included in the bill, improving military family housing and child development centers, and making certain that our veterans have a dignified final resting place. With just less than 100 days left before the end of this fiscal year, we need to get to work now to develop a plan that gets appropriations bills enacted that have bipartisan support. It's our responsibility to provide our military and our veterans with the funding they need, and I thank you, Madam Chair, and I yield back.
Thank you so much, Chairman, Ranking Member Granger, for your comments. Are there any other members that would like to speak on the bill? Having waited a sufficient amount of time for the technology pause, seeing none, are there?
Madam Chair,
Do I hear? Yes.
may I?
Mr. Bishop?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Let me.
Mr. Bishop, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. May I associate myself with the remarks of my colleagues and, of course, with my comments to you earlier this morning with regard to what you're dealing with at home, and let you know that you continue to have our support and our prayers as you go through this really traumatic experience. Let me thank you, Madam Chair, and Ranking Member Judge Carter for an extraordinary job, along with the staffs. And let me also extend a special shout out to Ms. Young, as this will be her last bill. I've worked with Ms. Young both on the Defense Subcommittee as well as this subcommittee for many years, and you will be missed, and we appreciate so much your service and wish you the best as you move into the next chapter of your life. Madam Chair, we must care for those who have borne the battle as well as their families, and I'm proud to say that this bill significantly increases funds for our VA system so that new facilities like those which will serve my district and others across the country can meet the growing needs of our veterans. Many of them return home bearing the visible and not so visible wounds of war. And this bill also targets funds to improve mental health services, to deal with the fallout of exposure to toxic substances, to reduce homelessness among our veteran community, and to grow our VA resources to better serve women, the fastest growing cohort within the veteran community. The bill also makes important investments in our military families by providing the funds needed to improve housing, provide services like child care, and addressing quality of life challenges that a large institution like our military faces. The FY22 Milcom VA Appropriations Bill adequately funds our military construction projects and our veterans' benefits health care, and the other programs that serve our veterans. And so I want to congratulate you and the ranking member and the subcommittee for a job well done. And I look forward to the bill moving on to the full committee and becoming law so that we can provide the support needed for our active duty military families as well as our military construction. So with that, Madam Chair, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Bishop. The gentleman yields back. Are there any other members who wish to make any remarks?
Just brief.
Mr. Chris, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. I particularly want to thank you, Madam Chair, for your courage and your strength and the trauma that you have dealt with that Ranking Member Judge Carter made opening comment. God bless you for your know that we all are with support what you're doing. I'm in the state of Florida today, not as a result of what happened at Surfside, but rather I was with the First Lady and Dr. Fauci last camp on vaccine for COVID-19. Again, can't thank you enough, and extraordinary bill, and thank you for bipartisan consideration of all members on for projects that are important. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chris. The gentleman yields back. My understanding is that Mr. Gonzalez would like to make some remarks. Mr. Gonzalez, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair and Ranking Member Carter, for holding this subcommittee markup today. This bill includes critical funding for priorities in my district, including a new child development center in Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, a new VA healthcare center in El Paso, as well as report language directing the VA to update its cybersecurity practices. I look forward to reporting this bill to the full Appropriations Committee, and I thank everybody for all the hard work. And I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez, and I just want to thank you in particular for your 20 years of service in the military to our country, and for the value that you have added to our discussions and deliberations during our subcommittee hearings. It's been a pleasure to work with you. Okay, are there any other members that wish to make remarks? Seeing none, are there any amendments? My understanding is that there have been no amendments submitted to the committee, and I don't believe anyone is scrambling to draft any. So with that, before I recognize Mr. Bishop for a motion, I also want to make sure not to neglect recognizing Jonathan Morris, my VA fellow, who was a detailee as a fellow in my office this year, and has also been remarkable in his contributions to this product. So thank you, Jonathan, and thank you for your service. And now I'd like to recognize Mr. Bishop for a motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move that the bill be favorably reported to the full committee.
The gentleman has made a motion to report the bill favorably to the committee. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. Let me remind members to please leave their copies of the bill and report in the room. I do ask unanimous consent that the staff be permitted to make technical and conforming changes to the measure just approved without objection, so ordered. I want to thank once again all the members for their incredible work, and look forward to continuing to work with you all as we move this bill through the process. Without objection, the subcommittee stands adjourned.